Hello and welcome to the Route One show. I'm delighted to say I'm now joined by Tom Carnduff to discuss all things Leeds United. Tom, thanks very much for joining us. First of all, just before we get to the transfer stuff, which is obviously exploding for Leeds over the last couple of days, Brentford 0-0. What were your thoughts, mate?
I quite liked it as a performance in terms of the one big thing for Leeds, isn't it, is that defensive side of all the performances. The Leeds' defence has consistently struggled since the return to the Premier League to do so. I mean, from the statistics, the underlying numbers, that was Leeds' best defensive performance since promotion in terms of the chances that they allowed to the opposition. So I think from that perspective, while it was a pretty dullish game, not a great deal happened. I think for Leeds, it's a very positive point for that reason alone, that the defence really showed that they can limit teams, and a good Brentford attack as well, a team that have been doing well this season. 3 points are needed, obviously, but a point and that performance, I think there's a big positive to take from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think it didn't quite happen in attack against Brentford? Was it just a case of how Brentford was set up, or was there something more to it, do you think?
A little bit. I think also when you're I know that a lot of the talk before the game was obviously dealing with Brentford set pieces. They've done a lot of stuff on that. Kind of how much of the focus was potentially on ensuring that they limited chances, and then it obviously then sometimes your attack suffers and things like that. Brentford are a very good team. They're a very well organised team. Since their promotion to the Premier League, they've been a very consistently good team, to be brutally honest, and a team that are punching above pretty much their financial capabilities and stuff like that. Very clever recruitment. So they're a very, very well organised team and a very well organised club. So I think, it's probably maybe not so much a defence first mindset, but it was just really getting into that game where perhaps Brentford were thinking, okay, a point's good for us. We're struggling to find a way through. If we can limit them, then we'll absolutely take it. So it's probably just a game that developed into that from that reason alone. But yeah, I think both teams come out of it probably happy enough with the outcome.
Yeah, I think it was strange because again, it's one of those games, almost like the Aston Villa game, which we lost, but you thought, well, it was a good performance. You look at the Brentford game, okay, we've not won a game, but it was a good defensive display against a good team. But you're looking at the league table, you're thinking, where are these wins coming from? Are you getting a bit antsy with how many kind of games we're burning through without actually getting these wins at the moment?
Not particularly, just because I still believe, Leicester are also down there, and I don't really think they're going to get dragged into it. Wolves are another team that will do so as well. I think at this stage, the performances for Leeds have been decent enough. Like, you see some of the other teams down there, and it's just really bad on a regular basis. No doubt about it, they need to win games, but at least they are. I think on Sunday was the big one. Obviously, having seen Saturday's results, that a win almost became more important, and it was a very winnable game, but at least they picked up a point from it. So look, the points have got to start coming. They've got to start winning, but at least the performances are there. I'd be more concerned if you hadn't seen the Villa performance, if the Brentford performance, if those hadn't come, and you're still really only getting 1 point out of it. When you kind of look at the context of the games and stuff like that, you're kicking yourself probably from Leeds' perspective that there wasn't more. As long as it is evening out and the points do come, then it's not too much of a problem at this stage. If it's still the case come March, then it's a concern. And then it's like, right, okay, actually, they need to start really turning this into some points. But pretty calm, pretty relaxed about it while the performances are there as they are at the moment. And I think when you're playing well, the points will come eventually. And I think there's just a bit of patience in that, because especially after the January window, it's looking a lot more positive than it did probably heading into that World Cup break.
Absolutely. And speaking of transfers, obviously the big news that's broken over the last couple of days is Weston McKennie from Juventus, and that transfer seems to be going full steam ahead at the moment. I think it's just a fee that they're trying to organise. Now, what will he bring? What will Weston McKennie actually bring to Leeds, do you think, Tom, if they can do it?
Yeah, I think Weston McKennie, in terms of how he is probably more like for Matthias Klick, which is obviously potentially the replacement route they're going down. Of course, Klick's left. They know that the midfield area is a little light in that way. And by all accounts, you look at the links and kind of what's going on, that midfield is definitely high up on the agenda, although maybe they're just trying to calm expectations down a little bit ahead of the deadline in case they can't get it done or if opportunities come up or whatsoever. The one thing that does, or the kind of having seen McKennie play a lot at Schalke when he was there, not so much when he was at Juventus, but of course the experience is definitely there, is that ability that in a team that is probably a bit more all action, he definitely seems to thrive, rather than what is a team that we're a bit calmer, a bit more possession based. I think his attributes certainly suit a not so much hectic, but a more front foot, a more aggressive type team than one who would prefer to sit back a little bit or try and have a little bit more of the ball and things like that. I think the big thing for him as well is that if he comes in, there's, by all accounts on the personal terms, if he's agreeing to them, that and the focus being on American players and things like that. But with Tyler Adams in the US national team, it's a very good partnership between the two of them. They clearly get on very well off the pitch as well. There's an element of probably a player that wants to come and he'll suit and fit in probably a lot quicker with it being a January window, which is absolutely key because where Leeds are on the table, you can't have signings who would have come in, say, in July. They have that 6-week period or 4-week period or whenever to really get adjusted before the season gets underway. You need a comfortable environment for him to come in and know his role pretty much. He's got the attributes to play that role. I think from memory, he's quite clinical in terms of the chances that he gets. He's not going to have a high volume of shots and there's not going to be as much, say, creative side in terms of the direct assists and stuff like that. But I think when the opportunities come his way, he's pretty decent at taking them. So if he becomes that click-esque box-to-box type midfielder, it'll probably suit Leeds. But I think there's kind of all those attributes there and having people he knows and being ready to go pretty much straight away, which is what they'll need, having that February fixture. You know, they could also still be in the cup by that point. There's rearranged ties to come. It's hugely important for them. But it's, again, after the Rutter deal, it's probably one that makes teams sit up and notice a little bit more. The McKennie's obviously circumstances and why Juventus is selling, you know, not ideal exactly, but a player that is starting for them is playing in the Champions League. It's a player of serious experience already in 2 top leagues, in the Bundesliga and in Italy as well, but at such a young age as well. So yeah, for me, I was slightly surprised when I saw the link first off, because he seems to have been looked at as a depth option for top 6 clubs. So if Leeds can get it done, it is, again, a huge credit to them, because January windows, they know this. They have typically struggled in the past. So if they can turn around and sign 3 players for 75 odd million, it's a huge statement, and a kind of sign that they're not settling for relegation battles at the moment.
Absolutely, and it'll feel like that that squad has really shifted and evolved into something different, which it's kind of felt a bit half and half at the moment this season. So exciting stuff. Unai link, I mean, that is still kind of going on, isn't it? In the background, I've noticed with Fabrizio Romano's tweets, he always kind of mentions him as kind of like, oh, and there's still a possibility there. It's a bit of an odd one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's, and the same with McKennie, that clearly there's been long-term interest. I know they say McKennie, they've kind of tracked him since those Schalke days, and when they thought potentially there was an opportunity to sign him, he went to Juventus instead at the time. And Unai seems to be the same. I think the World Cup probably was a good and bad thing for Leeds or any potential suitor. It's a good thing because they've gone, okay, clearly he's capable on a big stage and putting performances and stuff like that, but his current club are pretty much going to double what they want. And while it's a lot of money, and it's football terms, just say 20 million, it's nothing. But in terms of kind of the modern day Premier League and getting any half decent player, you're going to have to pay more than that now. And it's an incredibly tough situation to be in as an owner. But if you look at probably what they value, Matt, maybe that's, the sticking ground and stuff like that, and not getting sucked into the deadline day chaos and overpaying for players and things like that. So it's one that's still there, but I think for me with those links, that it's probably those 2 the main ones, but it's just opportunity, and the McKennie opportunities come up and they're looking to explore it. But long-term ones that have been there, and for me just underlines that they do feel that midfield needs another body, and having lost Click as well. And I think it probably needed another body before Click went anyway. So to look to address it before Tuesday, it just leaves the squad in a much better place.
Imagine if we did both. Could you just imagine we turned around and did both? That would make up for every deadline day disappointment.
I mean, the interesting one with McKennie is there's a realistic chance he comes in on loan as well. And Leeds haven't done loan signings at all. Like recently, it's just not been a thing that they do. I'd say the last one would be Jack Harrison in a weird way, wouldn't it? Because they kept
I think so.
extending his loan for another year and said, okay, we'll pay a couple of million more or whatever. So obviously it's probably just how they structure the deal, but that would be an interesting one for Leeds to bring in player on temporary terms, because they've been very good at avoiding doing that. It's just not really a market they've tapped into very recently.
No, exactly. Elsewhere, backroom staff have been added to as well. Chris Armas has been appointed as new assistant head coach. Obviously, he was at Manchester United. He's got a long-term relationship with Marsh, playing with him, etc. What kind of impact do you expect him to have? And does this also kind of bolster Marsh's position and it kind of, along with obviously the signings, make you think the board are absolutely backing him? And even if we don't necessarily get the results we need over the next 3 or 4 games, they might still stick with him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's exactly that. It's not just any coach that's come in. I love the pettiness of them saying another Premier League club working under Ralph Rangnick in the announcement, rather than saying it was Manchester United, which was a good petty points they got there. But I think it's exactly that. It's the backroom appointments that are coming in that, to his credit, he's been at some very good clubs, some very good leagues as well, and has been entrusted to be in the various members of staff there, but obviously someone that Marsh knows. And combine that with the sort of players that they're looking at, the sort of kind of not necessarily names. I know the easy link to say, oh, this player's American, he's American, but in terms of the likes of Rutter, who will excel in the defensive metrics and is real hard work and pressing from the front, and the overall team structure will benefit massively from having Rutter leading the line. You're saying that we've given Jesse Marsh a long-term contract and we fully believe that he is the man going forward. Now, whether, I know he completely divides opinion, and very rarely will there be a manager like Bielsa who very much unifies and everyone's behind fully and brilliant, great, we love him. It's just a very rare thing in football. So it's definitely a case of that. But it also pretty much puts the pressure back onto him, because you can look at the squad and there were, kind of gaps in certain areas, and the board have turned around and said, well, we've broken the record for a forward that we needed. We've brought in a left back who is someone well known to you, who's versatile, who can play centre back, left back, defensive midfield. You've got that versatility there. And if Weston, McKennie or whoever comes in, we've spent a significant amount of money again signing a midfielder that's suited to your system. So again, then it's like, okay, fair enough. They've done more than done their part. The pressure then goes back onto a head coach, which is not easy, of course, but it's all that combination of things. But I think the top line is they're definitely backing him at the moment. They obviously see something there that I think Leeds' performances are gradually heavily overstated in terms of how bad they are. They're not a bad team by any means whatsoever. It's just not the full thrill of how it was in the years before it. So yeah, definitely a case of backing him, and whether you agree with it or not, it's one whole club now pulling in one direction. They're adamant that that is the direction they want to go in, and allowing him to bring in a coach that he knows very well is just yet another kind of step towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned him just then as well, Bielsa, links to Everton. That, because this is a strange one, because every time I go on Twitter, it's no, he's not joining them, and then he's still in the race, and then he's out of the race. I mean, can you see it happening? I mean, what impacts would Bielsa have at Everton in these circumstances as well?
Don't know. I'm really unsure on this one. I mean, for clarity, Sean Dyche is still the favourite for it. But I suppose he's in London, or he flew into London today, didn't he, for talks with Everton. I think Everton will see that as a bit of a win just to get him in for the talks and stuff like that. I don't know. I think it's going to divide opinion with him coming back, how he sits with Leeds fans and where he's going. And obviously Everton's situation in battling the same battles that Leeds are battling at the moment. He's never taken a job mid-season, if I'm right in saying he has never taken a job as an entire managerial career.
No.
Club level, where he's come in midway he clearly needs that time. And I think if he didn't have that time that first season to completely transform Leeds, might have been a different story. I think the upheaval is so drastic as well. It's not just on the pitch, he'll get them playing like this. Leeds fans and everyone with Leeds knows everything he wants. The whole organisation, the whole structure, the training ground, everything has to change the way that he wants to do it. And that's a long-term thing. So I think for Everton that they have to accept that relegation could be a part of it, that you're not going to get the all, remarkable turnaround that Leeds saw in that first game against Stoke because he had the time to work with it. It's going to take this squad that by all accounts aren't really suited to what he wants. They're very slow. The back line's very, it's just not quite all there in terms of the purer footballing ability that he'll perhaps want. And in a weird way, probably one of the players who would absolutely thrive in the way he wants to play is Anthony Gordon, who looks to be off and joining Newcastle. He's probably the one player that could go, actually, I could really build the team around this in a weird way. And this is kind of why he wants out, because the team's not really being built around him and stuff like that. I could see it happen. Everton are probably a club that do suit a Marcelo Bielsa, really, in terms
historic
of
and
it's got all the factors of a club that he likes to be in charge of. I just think it's too short term to expect an impact straight away. He'll try and we'll see glimpses of it. It's just going to be a tough one. I think Dyche, if they get Dyche, it's very much a case of relegation's a failure. If they get Bielsa, I think they have to accept that relegation probably will happen still, and they need a summer to really rebuild. Let him do what he did at Leeds, change everything, and then probably fly back up into the Premier League.
Yeah, I'd be so conflicted as a Leeds fan because on the one hand, I obviously worship the man for what he did at Leeds, and I would hate to see him go somewhere and it just not work at all and he gets sacked, or something like that. But at the same time, I don't want Everton to improve because that'd be another team that we could be battling against.
We kind of got... no, I'm not saying the time under Bielsa wasn't great. It was absolutely phenomenal, but particularly that last season and obviously how it ended, Leeds were just appalling for a large part of that season. And as soon as he got promoted to the Premier League, I mean, in the Championship, it was great because for 2 seasons, they were relatively untroubled because basically he developed them into a team who, personnel-wise, necessarily weren't quite the case, but he made them a team that were just so much better than everyone else. That defensively, we're not troubled. It's fine. We can kind of play our own way. You get to the Premier League, coming up against the best attacks in the world, and you're getting exposed. And it was really the case last year where multiple times the discussion was, are Leeds going to break the record for goals conceded? That constantly came up and up and up and up. And you look at the personnel of the Everton defence and things like that, and that just spells trouble straight away until he can kind of shift it around or move players out, get certain players in, a Ben White-esque type ball-playing defender that is there. I just think that's going to be a big issue as well, that he could probably improve them in some ways. That defence is going to struggle big time under him, I think. And in a relegation battle, it's not what you want.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So moving on, it's the FA Cup at the weekend. It's Accrington Stanley. I mean, it should be, I didn't say it actually after recent history, but I've got a feeling after watching Marsh in the press conference earlier today as well. I mean, he seems to be taking it incredibly serious, and I get the feeling that this is a real priority for Leeds, which it's not really been in previous years. It comes across like they really want to get somewhere in it.
Yeah, he said it, didn't he, before the original third round tie, that that it's clearly a priority. And I think they then stated the amount of changes. So we're 7? I get you want to rotate a bit, but you can't really say it's a priority for us and then make that many changes. And particularly with the greatest respect, some of the players who hadn't played a great deal of senior football as well, as great as it was. Obviously, Sonny came on and scored the equaliser. And then for the replay to go pretty much virtually full strength, even Meslier being in goal, not even to have a cup keeper to go, this is what we want. I think they're obviously clearly now seeing an opportunity, and perhaps that team and the replay was because they knew they had Accrington or Boreham Wood in the replay. they've seen an opportunity here. And while it does on paper look exactly the type of cup set that will happen in front of the TV cameras, a Premier League team taking on a struggling League One team, it's got all the hallmarks of it. The great, like, on paper, you couldn't ask really for a better tie. Being brutally honest, any Premier League club, if they get offered this, will take it rather than playing another Premier League side. You just have to accept the risks that you could be the headline grabbers for all the wrong reasons. Accrington as well, they played 120 minutes, didn't they, on Tuesday? Their replay got pushed back a week. That's not ideal. You don't then want it to go to extra time to play an extra 30 minutes and then be the early kickoff on a Saturday. I mean, all the things are just perfect for Leeds. So it's just they've got to take it serious. You've got to go full strength and just try and win the game. And then if you're in a position, that's when you can start making changes and resting players and stuff like that. But they should take it seriously because it's a great opportunity for them. Just with the other way the cup is going as well, 9 Premier League teams are already out of it. Nearly half the Premier League's already out. Yeah. Man City are playing Arsenal. You look at so many of the draws and the potential numbers. Leeds could get a really good home tie in the next round if they get through. Yeah. And then suddenly you're in a quarterfinal and it's on. So it's a huge opportunity for them. Huge opportunity for them. They've got to go strong. You sit the risk of grabbing the headlines yet again, as Leeds have done in recent years, but it's a great opportunity for them. They've got to take it in. You imagine they will, fingers crossed, and hopefully you don't have to revisit this for all the wrong reasons. But it's a tie that's favourable.
Accrington don't have any reality TV stars playing for them or anything, do they? Like bloody Mark Wright last time.
He didn't do anything. I felt actually sorry for the Crawley lads that day. I was like, hang on, they've done this. They're the ones that put the work in here. Give them some credit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. If you've enjoyed the video, please give us a like and do remember to subscribe to the channel. Tom, we'll speak again next week. Hopefully we've got McKennie in there as well. We'll wait and see.
Hopefully a 5th round of an FA Cup as well. It's great.
Perfect. I'll take that.